Hi, my name is Kai, and I'm an accessibility analyst for Nels. I do a lot of testing of websites, ebooks, and apps. And so, what I'll be talking about today comes from my experience doing that work, but I'll also bring in my personal experiences as a screen reader user. In this session, we'll be talking about reflowable EPUBs. We'll be going over some of the characteristics that make them accessible, as well as things to avoid when designing them. But before we go into the details, I want to talk about a decision that all publishers and designers must make before they embark on this journey. One of them is deciding whether the EPUB will be fixed or reflowable. I like to be unbiased and say that there's some advantages and disadvantages to each, and both are fine, but the fact is, I like reflowable EPUBs a lot better. And in fact, if I see a fixed EPUB, I'll avoid reading those. So why is that? Well, you may be aware that fixed layout books are often used to preserve the appearance of a print book. But what you might not be aware of is that this approach sacrifices accessibility. Reflowable ebooks allows users to customize font type, size, and color. But also from a screen reader perspective, it reads a lot better using text to speech. Let me show you why. Here I have a reflowable EPUB open, but I've also got a fixed EPUB open as well. And we're just going to take a listen to the screen reader and see what each of them sounds like. So here's the reflowable first.
They soon know that they will grow up, and the way Wendy knew was this. One day when she was 2 years old, she was playing in the garden, and she plucked another flower and ran with it to her mother. I suppose she must have looked rather delightful, for MRS. Darling put her hand to her heart and cried, "Oh, I can't be remain like this forever." This was all that passed between them on the subject, but henceforth Wendy knew that she must grow up. You all
And now here's the fixed layout. Here we go.
Minnie Pearl was a dog of another sort who preferred sandy beaches for her comfort. If a lake was in sight, she was on her way wagging her way into the bay.
So you can tell that the fixed layout sounds a little bit choppier. Why is that? Well, the way that this is coded is using span tags around every word. And so the screen reader will display this as a word on every line. So if I go to the beginning of this section
Main con
and arrow down from here,
Minnie Pearl was a dog of another.
you can tell that there's only one word per line. But if I go back to the reflowable EPUB
Thorium Peter Pan Thor
and start arrowing down from here,
2 is the beginning of the end. Of course they lived at 14 their house number on their street, and until Wendy came her mother was the chief one, Jamla Chocolate. She was a lovely lady with a romantic mind and such a sweet, mocking mouth. Her romantic mind was like the tiny boxes, one within the other, that come from the
you can tell that I'm getting full lines of text. This is why I vastly prefer reading with reflowable EPUBs. Now, some of you might be thinking some books need to be in fixed layout, such as poetry, but poems can be displayed well with reflowable EPUBs. I'm going to find a poem and we'll see what that looks like and sounds like. Here we go.
if you kept me in the loop, I would never have to say out loud how this moment broke us open. The call of a male cardinal in the yard, the muffled ring of the telephone in the other room, our dog scratching at every closed door, in the hopes that life as we know it would give way and crack like the eggs our chickens, brewed on and warm, like the time you cried, a rutted thing that did not know how to mend. I tried to tell you the difference between loop, and the feedback wasn't good. I snapped the synapse with a sound, Miss Ladier, 84 separator.
So you can tell that all the pauses were pretty much at the right places. This is again with a reflowable EPUB. So it's definitely possible to offer a good experience even using this layout. So next we'll be talking about navigation. The ability to navigate through ebooks efficiently is essential for accessibility. It allows readers to find the info they need. For example, a linked table of contents and headings are common features that users will gravitate to the most so that they can find the chapters and sections they need. You saw me navigate by headings to find the poem, but I'll do it a little bit slower so you can hear what it sounds like with the screen reader.
Wendy came first, then John, then Michael, heading level 3. Complimentary landmark, a little context, heading level 2. He had his position in the city to consider heading level 4. Region image with extended description heading level 2.
Not only did the screen reader announce the name of the section, but also level 2, level 3, level 4 headings. This is really helpful to be able to understand how the book is generally laid out. For example, major sections usually use a level 1 heading, subsections level 2, and then subsections within that section level 3, and so on. When designers use headings as styling, this throws it all off. I've seen books where it jumps from level 1 to level 6 and then back to level 4. So that's not very helpful. Also, I've seen books where they will have the chapter number as one heading and then the name of that chapter as a separate heading. And because these headings act as navigational points, I'm only able to navigate to each section when I press my keystroke to jump by heading twice. Right now, because of the way this demo book is marked up, I can press the jump to next heading command once to build a jump from the first section I'm on to the next. But when you add these extra navigational points, I'll have to press it more than once, which again is a little bit less efficient. Now with table of contents, the way to get to them is a little bit different depending on the reader that you're using. I'm using Thorium, by the way. And so I can
Toolbar navigation landmark list with 3 items, list with 5 items, navigation toggle button pressed. List with 6 items, toggle button not pressed, table of contents.
press the table of contents.
Pressed.
And then if I arrow down from here,
Table of contents list with 7 items, heading level 1 link cover. Heading level 1 link title page. Heading level 1 link list of illustrations. Heading level 1 link dedication. Heading level 1 link epigraph. Heading level 1 link chapter 1. Peter list with 6 items. Heading level 2 link all children except out of list. Heading level 1 link chapter 1. Peter breaks through. Heading level 1 link epigraph. Heading level 1 link dedication. Heading level 1 link list of illustrations. A Thorium Peter Pan document. Out of list toggle.
I can jump to this section and then I'm going to find the main content here.
No next land. Toolbar navigate. No previous. Out of toolbar main content. Main landmark frame. Clickable link. Heading level 1 list of illustrations.
And then I can arrow down from here.
Link illustration 1. Captain Hook by F.
And see what the content is.
Link illustration 2. Peter Pan playing the pipes.
Now there are a lot of other elements you can use to jump to different areas of the book. A second ago, I was using landmarks to try to find the start of the main content for that page. But we can also navigate by links.
Diagram 2 global population of persons with disabilities long description grouping long description region https://starlink footnote.
Images.
Region image alt y minus y subregion diagram 2 global population.
Tables.
Table with 56 rows and 6 columns row 1 through 2 column.
Etc. And one thing to point out with landmarks in particular is that there are different types of landmarks to use. For example, main content usually uses the main landmark and asides will use the complementary landmark.
Region poem sample X head region graph with link out as region map sample heading region image with extended description heading level 2. Complementary landmark a little context heading level 2.
This is another way that users can efficiently navigate to different sections and to know how in general the book is laid out. Now links are heavily used for extended descriptions and footnotes. So I'm going to show what that sounds like here.
Starlink. Butting them back into line, escorting the children to school, walking sedately by their side when they were well behaved, and butting them back into line if they strayed on John's footer. Link star Daisy never once forgot his sweater, and she usually carried an umbrella in her mouth and case.
So here, let me navigate to the link.
Link.
And then I'm going to click on this.
Landmark star link.
And when I arrow down,
rain, there is a room. Link star Daisy never once forgot his sweat. R link star. Starlink in England soccer was called football. Footy for short. Footnote.
Then I can hear the footnote, and then if I click on the return link,
separate footnote link star. Separate footnote link star. Star link. Butting them back into line if they strayed on John's footer. Link star Daisy never once forgot his sweater.
I'm back to where I was before. This is the same with extended descriptions, and I'll demo that in a few minutes. Another thing to mention about links is that they need to be well labeled. Most of the links in this demo are pretty well labeled, but there's one that I think could use a different one.
Landmark star link. Region diagram 2 global population of persons with disabilities long description grouping long description link caption. Region https://www.accessibilitypublishing.com/wp.
And this link would be this really long URL. It's quite a challenge to listen to the whole thing without trying to move on. And so to make this more accessible, we want to rename this URL to something like uh, new COVID cases, since this is a link to a map, and make it so that when the screen reader user comes across it, they know what it is without having to sit through that really long link. The other reason why we want to label this properly is so that when users pull up a list of links,
Elements list dialog. Preview. Level 0 HT. Star 5 of 5 levels. HTTPS. Long description 3 of 5 levels. Star 2.
where all these links are displayed now in a list, they can jump by first layer navigation and be able to hear what they've landed on without having to, again, sit through a really long link.
Thorium.
By the way, this concept of a links list can be applicable to a headings list as well. It just depends on the screen reader. Some screen readers have this feature, while others might not. I would say nowadays, most major screen readers do. A well-designed EPUB will allow you to navigate it even though the interface of the reading app may be different. As long as the reading app is accessible and uses an accessible web view, the experience is pretty similar across a lot of popular platforms and screen readers. I want to specifically talk about the navigation because that's, again, really important and something that is fairly consistent. So I can jump by headings.
Wendy came first, and John, then complimentary landmark a little context heading. He had his position in the city to consider heading level 4.
Links.
Region figure long description link caption. Region https://dub link footnote.
Landmarks.
Region poem sample X heading level. Region graph with link out to some. Region map sample heading level. Region image with extended description complimentary landmark a little.
And so on. I can also go to the table of contents.
Out of frame tool blank. Button alt plus shift plus T table of contents heading list with link title pay link list of illustrations. Link dedication. Link epigraph. Link chapter 1. List with 6 items. Link 8 out of list with 1 items. Link MRS. Darling streams. Out of list link chapter 2. List with 1.
And go to the next chapter by clicking on the link. So as you can see, the power of navigation really comes from well-coded reflowable EPUBs. Now, the reason why I took us to this section is because I want to talk about drop caps. Drop caps are problematic for screen reader users if they are poorly implemented. One of them on this page is poorly coded because it uses a span tag, which separates the first letter from the rest of the sentence. So the first word is then read incorrectly.
Main landmark up frame landmark chap MRS Darling stream the opportunity came heading level.
So in this section, we have the poorly coded drop cap, and this is what it will sound like.
Heading level 3 the opportunity came. The opportunity came a week.
Were you able to catch that? Let's listen again.
The opportunity. Heading level 3 the opportunity came. The opportunity came.
My screen reader said he. The word, of course, is the, but because of the span tags surrounding the letter T, it's putting it on a separate line.
T.
When I arrow up, I landed on the line that just says T, and when I arrow down,
the opportunity came a week later on that never to be forgotten.
I can hear the rest of the word followed by the rest of the sentence. Now, one of the solutions that I've seen some publishers try to do is provide the drop cap as an image and then add alt text to that image, which the alt text would just contain that letter. That still doesn't work because the screen reader will see it as a separate element and still pronounce the word incorrectly. So please don't do that. There is a properly coded drop cap in this section as well. And when I read it with the screen reader, it will read the word correctly. But I still, in general, don't recommend using drop caps because They can be problematic as well for readers with learning disabilities. Images can be made accessible to blind and low vision users through image descriptions. There are two kinds: alt text for simple to medium complexity and extended for complex descriptions. Here we have an image that uses a simple description.
Graphic sepia tone photo of a middle-aged white man with a mustache.
Whenever the screen reader comes across an image, it will say image and read the alt text that is provided for it. So when you write your description, it's generally unnecessary to say that this is an image because the screen reader already knows. But what the screen reader does not know is what's contained in the image, and that's where you come in. There are certain circumstances where you might want to include the word illustration or map or graph to be a little bit more specific, but that's a little bit beyond the scope of this presentation. However, I encourage you to check out accessiblepublishing.ca so that you can learn a little bit more about the details of how to write good descriptions. There's a lot of guidelines and examples that you can draw from. Now let's look at a complex description and see what that sounds like. All right, here we have a complex description.
Region image with extended description heading level 2.
This is what it'll sound like.
Grouping graphic diagram depicting prevalence estimates of persons with disabilities.
When we go down from here, we can hear the caption.
Caption diagram 2 global population of persons with disabilities.
Now we have a link.
Caption link long description.
So notice that the alt text itself is simple, but because we know that there's a lot more information that needs to be conveyed, we can provide this in a longer format by offering a link. When we click this link, we can now tell what else is in this image that's important to convey.
Clickable region. Grouping graphic diagram depicting prevalence estimates of persons with disabilities. Complementary landmark image description. Diagram depicting prevalence estimates of persons with disabilities. List with 4 items. Bullet 15% of the world's population have a disability. Bullet 1 in 5 women is likely to experience disability during her life. Bullet 46% of persons aged 60 years and over have a disability. Bullet 1 in 10 children is a child with a disability. Out of list image description end. Caption diagram 2 global population of persons with disabilities.
Here we have our caption again. And then now we have a return link.
Caption link back to chapter. Out of grouping out of.
When we click this, we are now back to where we were before. This is a really elegant way of doing this and something that Nels has been doing for quite some time as we've been producing books with well-written image descriptions. Next, let's talk about math. A lot of people think that math can be made accessible by providing alt text, since a lot of equations are provided in image form. However, what we recommend is MathML because it presents equations in an accessible way, which means that screen readers can read the terminology using the correct terminology, and it can be displayed with math notation, in this case, Nemeth. If components to display the math are not installed, the fallback then would be alt text on the image itself, and the image would, of course, contain the equation. So let's take a look at what this sounds like.
Region math sample heading level 2.
We have the image showing the equation, and it is provided as alt text.
Image alt y minus y sub 1 equals start fraction y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1 end fraction left parenthesis x minus x sub 1 right parenthesis graphic.
And now here's the MathML when I expand this button.
MathML present expanded. Y minus y sub 1 equals the fraction with numerator y sub 2 minus y sub 1 and denominator x sub 2 minus x sub 1 times open paren x minus x sub 1 close paren.
Both are technically correct, but as I've mentioned, MathML is preferred because there's that guarantee that the screen reader will be using the correct terminology and it will be displaying the Braille using math notation properly. Next, let's talk about tables. Tables, of course, should be marked up semantically. This allows readers to get a spatial sense of the layout. Here we have a pretty big table.
Table with 56 rows and 6 columns, row 1 through 2, column 1 ranking.
And because it's marked up properly, I can move up, down, left, and right. and move from cell to cell.
Row 3-1. Applicant's name, column 2, Samsung Electronics Co. Ltd. Origin, column 3, Republic of Korea. Number of designs contained and published registrations 2017, column 4, 626. 2 row 4, 573. 3 row 5, 608. 4 row 6, 353.
Because this table has headers, I can tell which column the headers are associated with. Now, one advantage, of course, of using tables is to be able to get a sense of where you are in this table. So if I move to the right and then down,
number of designs contained in public edge of table 505 row 7 400 6 row 8 300 7 row 9 300.
I know that I'm down a couple of rows and have moved right a couple of columns to where I started, which means that my starting point is now above where I am now and to the left. You can't really get this with a list or with a description of a table. In fact, I strongly discourage you not to write alt text to try to describe a table because it'll be overly verbose and no one will want to go through all that. What about graphs and maps? Well, these of course can be made accessible through text descriptions as well, but we have auditory means. This technique is called sonification. For example, we can display a graph using a variety of tones and notes that can be used to represent the height of bars if we're dealing with a bar graph, or sine wave if we're dealing with the shape of a curve, like a line graph. I have a sonified map, which I want to show you now.
Map showing number of active cases by location. For more details, see link https://www.
This is a link that we just link out to from the EPUB rather.
https://www.accessibility.
And by the way, this is part of our COVID project in which we provide publicly available data in accessible formats.
Graphic map showing number of active cases by location.
We're using SAS Accelerator, so I'm going to
accelerate map showing number of
accelerate this map.
Graph view. Moving to set.
And now I can explore the points on this map.
Nunavut 320, 943 miles at 12 o'clock. Newfoundland and Labrador 2,489, 1,234 miles at 3 o'clock. Prince Edward Island 2,460, 1,302 miles at 4 o'clock. Nova Scotia 4,316, 1,363 miles at 4 o'clock.
Unfortunately, this recording is in mono, so you're not hearing the stereo effect, which is really important in sonification because that in this context gives me a general direction of where the locations of the different points are, and I'm able to tell the different locations as they relate to each other. The notes also are important because I can tell the softer notes are provinces that are in front of me, and the slightly harsher notes are ones that are behind me. And the pitch itself indicates the distance. So in this way, I'm able to get a much more spatial representation that I otherwise might not be able to get with text description alone. Images can also be represented tactily in hard copy form. These could be tactile supplements that could be included in EPUBs, but what tactile graphics are images that can be felt with the fingertips. I'm going to pull up an image and show you what that looks like in its digital form, and then I will share the hard copy version. What I have here is a map of Russian troop locations for February 2022. This is a tactile map that's been produced by the San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind for the Touching the News project. The PDF that I'm showing on the screen is the digital version for the Swell Touch method. Swell Touch is a really neat method where you take a specialized paper that has been coated with a proprietary formula, chemical formula, and when you run it through heat, these little bubbles, micro capsules break, and cause wherever there are lines to swell up, and you're then able to tactily feel these different lines. So this is how you would design a digital version that can then be run through a machine with a light source that can cause the effect that we want. Now, there's also an embossed version that comes with the set of graphics. This allows users who have a Braille embosser to be able to create the image themselves or to print it out themselves. And that's the method that I've chosen. So I will turn off my screen share and hold up this hard copy version so you can see it. So as you can see, there are dots that are closely grouped together, close enough to be able to form different shapes. And in this way, I'm able to tell the different locations and what the different countries look like and their borders. By the way, here is the print version, the print reference version, where you can see all the labels as well. But basically, when I look at this map, I can see that they've used a different texture for the Black Sea, a solid dot for the newly arrived units, some letter abbreviations, so CR for Crimea, MD for Moldova, and different numbers to represent the number of troops. I can see that they've used different lines to outline the different borders. So Ukraine is in the center with Crimea to the south, surrounded by the Black Sea. Romania is the southwest. Belarus is to the northwest. Russia is to the northeast. So I can see all of that with the tactile graphic. This is, of course, one of the advantages of being able to display things spatially. But when we compare this to auditory techniques like sonification, the big advantage of tactile graphics is the ability to see the different shapes. Auditory means can provide a spatial sense of the general approximate location of things, but it's very difficult to show shape and other details like that. So one thing that I do want to mention before we end the session is that in the future, there are tactile dynamic displays that will be more common. And instead of printing in hard copy, we can display these in a digital form. But it would be really nice for the time being, and perhaps even in the future, to be able to get an EPUB and a tactile supplement of tactile graphics as well, or even 3D models. With that, that's the end of this presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.